The sun hung low over the endless expanse of the dry plains, casting long golden shadows that stretched like fingers across the dusty earth. Emily, a young woman of about 25, trudged along the worn dirt road, her shoes kicking up tiny clouds of dust with every step. Her small bag, slung over one shoulder, felt heavier with each mile, not just from its contents, but from the burden of uncertainty and worry that weighed on her heart. Hunger gnawed at her, sharp and insistent, reminding her that she had been walking since dawn with barely a morsel in her stomach. Emily's eyes, a soft shade of hazel, scanned the horizon for any sign of shelter, any hint of life beyond the parched fields. In the distance, the outline of a ranch appeared, its wooden fences weathered but sturdy, with a barn standing tall against the fading sky. Relief flickered through her chest, fragile and hesitant, like the flutter of a sparrow caught in a gentle wind. She quickened her pace, clutching the small gold ring she had carried all this way. It wasn't much, but it was all she had left of the life she had known. Perhaps it could buy her a meal, perhaps even a place to rest for the night. As she approached the ranch gate, Emily's hands trembled slightly. She could see the faint shapes of livestock grazing, the faint scent of hay in the air, and the soft murmur of life that had continued undisturbed while she had wandered alone. Swallowing her pride, she called out, her voice barely more than a whisper, "Excuse me, I don't mean to intrude. I have this, and I was hoping—" She held up the ring, its gold glinting in the waning sunlight. "Maybe I could trade it for a meal?" For a moment there was silence. Then a figure emerged from the shade of the barn. Luke, the rancher's son, tall and broad-shouldered, with a kind smile that seemed to light up the dusty air around him. His hair, the color of sun-warmed wheat, fell casually over his forehead, and his eyes held a warmth that made Emily feel strangely exposed yet safe. He stepped closer, but did not take the ring. "Gold isn't what we need," he said gently, his voice calm and soothing. "You are," Emily blinked, startled. She had expected suspicion, maybe even anger at her intrusion, but not this. Her cheeks flushed, a mixture of embarrassment and a flicker of hope. She had come with a planned trade, something valuable for something essential, but instead, she found herself being valued for herself, not for what she owned. She looked down at the dusty ground, unsure how to respond. The knot of fear and hunger inside her loosened just a little. Luke's presence was steady, reassuring. He motioned toward the side of the barn. "Come on, let's get you some food." "No need for gold?" Emily hesitated, overwhelmed by the unexpected. Kindness. Her life had been filled with hardship, moments where she felt invisible, reduced to nothing but the sum of her possessions or mistakes. And yet here was someone seeing her as more than that, treating her as a person who belonged in the world, not someone begging to survive in it. As they walked together, Emily felt the weight of her journey begin to lift, if only slightly. The sun continued its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting a soft glow on the ranch and on the dusty road she had traveled. With each step, the sounds of life-chirping crickets, the low murmur of cattle, the gentle rustle of leaves grew louder, a reminder that the world was larger than her troubles, and that perhaps, just perhaps, she had found a place to start. By the time they reached the side of the barn, where a small wooden table had been set with simple plates and steaming bowls of food, Emily's heart had settled into a cautious rhythm of hope. For the first time in days she could imagine the possibility of rest, of nourishment, and maybe even, in time, of belonging. The journey had been long, the road lonely and hard, but as she looked up at Luke, offering a smile that seemed to promise understanding and patience, Emily felt the first spark of trust. Here, on this quiet ranch at the edge of the plains, her story was only just beginning. The air around the ranch seemed quieter now, yet full of life in ways Emily hadn't noticed before. The gentle lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through the wheat fields, and the occasional clink of tools from the barn created a rhythm that felt comforting and real. Emily followed Luke as he led her down the dusty path toward the main house. Her stomach still knotted with hunger, but her heart felt lighter than it had in days. There was something about Luke's steady, calm, and patient that made the world seem less hostile. They stopped at the edge of the barnyard, where the smell of fresh hay and earth mingled in a warm, inviting way. Emily glanced down at her hands. Still clutching the small bag with the few belongings she had carried so far, she had expected suspicion or distrust from strangers. She had expected cold rejection, maybe even scorn for trying to barter with her ring. But Luke's smile had been different. Kind, genuine, as if he saw her not for what she had or didn't have but for who she was. So, Luke said, tilting his head slightly, "You've been on the road a long time?" His tone was gentle, conversational, not intrusive. Emily nodded. "Yes, I've been trying to find work, food. A place to rest?" Her voice caught slightly at the end. "I don't have much, just this ring. I thought maybe—" She trailed off, embarrassed at how pitiful she must seem. Luke shook his head, smiling in a way that warmed her from the inside. "Gold isn't what we need. You are." Emily froze, blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. Was he serious? The words felt strange in her ears, almost dreamlike. People rarely said things like that. People rarely looked at her as if she were something valuable simply by existing. Luke noticed her hesitation and chuckled softly. "I mean it. This ranch doesn't need gold. We need good people. And from the looks of it, you've got more courage than most." Emily's cheeks flushed. Courage? She hadn't felt courageous for days, just tired, hungry, desperate. Yet, for the first time, someone saw her in a way that made her want to believe in herself. She tried to smile, uncertain, but a small flicker of hope ignited within her chest. You really think so?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Luke nodded. "I do. Besides, it's late. You look like you could use a meal and a place to rest. Come on, I'll show you where you can stay tonight." Emily hesitated, the weight of pride and fear fighting with her need for safety. She had been on her own for so long that the thought of accepting help felt alien. But there was something in Luke's calm demeanor, the way he spoke without judgment or expectation, that made her decision easier. She nodded and followed him toward the smaller guest cabin near the edge of the property. As they walked, Luke asked simple questions: her name, where she was from, if she had family. Emily answered cautiously at first, then more openly, encouraged by the warmth in his tone. It wasn't pity she sensed, but genuine interest. Each step toward the cabin made the tension in her shoulders ease just a little. The setting sun cast long shadows over the fields, painting everything in hues of orange and gold. Emily thought she had never seen anything so beautiful, the way the light caught the fences, the wind through the wheat, and the distant hills beyond the ranch. When they reached the cabin, Luke pushed the door open and gestured inside. "It's small, but it's clean. You can stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll see what we can do to help you settle in." Emily stepped inside, taking in the modest furnishings: a simple bed, a wooden table, a small stove, and felt a rare sense of relief. She could almost imagine herself here, at least for a little while, safe from hunger and uncertainty. She turned to Luke, wanting to thank him properly, but found that words failed her. Instead, she simply smiled, and Luke returned it with one that was patient, kind, and understanding. In that quiet moment, as the wind carried the scents of the plains through the open window, Emily realized that she had crossed an invisible threshold. She was no longer just a weary traveler, wandering alone through the harsh landscape. She had found someone willing to see her worth. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this ranch and this kind, observant young man could be the start of something new. The cabin door creaked gently as Luke pushed it open, revealing a modest but cozy interior. Emily stepped inside, letting her small bag drop onto the worn wooden floor. The room smelled faintly of pine and sunlight, mingled with the lingering warmth of a fire that had recently burned. A single bed with a neatly folded quilt sat against the far wall, and a small wooden table held a few simple utensils and a pitcher of fresh water. "It's not much," Luke said, his voice calm and unassuming, "but it's clean. You can stay here tonight. We'll see what tomorrow brings." Emily looked around the room, taking it all in. Her exhaustion pressed against her like a heavy cloak, and for a moment She let herself imagine sinking into the bed and closing her eyes, free from hunger and worry. It was a sensation she hadn't felt in weeks, perhaps months, the simple safety of a roof over her head and a warm meal to come. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice nearly a whisper. I don't know what to say." Luke gave a small shrug and a warm smile. "No need to say much. Just eat, rest, and don't worry about the ring. It's not needed here. You're more important than gold." Emily's cheeks warmed. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. People rarely treated her with such quiet kindness. Most days she had to fend for herself, surviving on scraps or luck. And yet here on this ranch, she was offered more than food or shelter. She was offered acceptance. As Luke led her back toward the main house for dinner, Emily couldn't help but notice the subtle beauty of the ranch in the evening light. Golden rays filtered through the branches of a large oak tree near the barn, casting patterned shadows across the ground. Cows grazed lazily, their soft lowing blending with the gentle rustle of the wind through the tall grasses. Every sound felt deliberate and peaceful, as if the world had slowed down just for this moment. Inside the house, the kitchen was warm with the comforting smell of cooked vegetables and fresh bread. Luke gestured toward the table. "Sit down. Eat as much as you need." Emily hesitated, then sank into the chair, her hands folded nervously in her lap. The table was simple, yet inviting: steaming bowls of stew, freshly baked bread, and a small plate of fruit. She picked up her spoon with shaking hands and took a tentative bite. Warmth spread through her chest as the rich flavors filled her mouth. Hunger faded, replaced by a comfort she hadn't realized she craved. Luke sat across from her, watching her carefully but without intrusion. He asked gentle questions: her journey, her hometown, her dreams for the future. Emily answered, cautiously at first, then more openly, feeling the pull of his genuine curiosity. For the first time in a long while she felt heard, seen, and understood. "You know," Luke said, breaking the comfortable silence that followed a pause in their conversation, "this ranch isn't just about work, it's about community. About helping each other, learning from each other, and making something lasting." Emily looked up at him, intrigued. "You mean it's not just a farm?" Luke chuckled softly. "It's a lot of things. And sometimes people make it even more than what it is. It's a place where people matter, where who you are is more important than what you bring." Emily's heart swelled at his words. It was so different from the world she had known, a world that judged her by survival, by what she could produce, or by what she owned. Here she was simply Emily, a young woman with courage, with dreams, and with the chance to start over. After dinner, Luke guided her back to the cabin, leaving her with a lantern and a kind smile. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll see what we can do together. No rush, no expectations, just a fresh start." Emily watched him leave, the quiet creak of the cabin door marking the moment as a turning point. Alone now, she allowed herself to relax, sinking onto the soft quilt with a sigh that carried all the tension she had held for weeks. For the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could belong. The sun had set completely now, leaving a deep purple hue across the sky, dotted with the first stars of evening. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields, carrying a sense of promise. Emily closed her eyes, feeling a rare calmness settle in her chest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, yes, but for tonight, there was warmth, safety, and hope. And in that quiet, gentle moment, Emily allowed herself to imagine a future she had never dared to dream. The morning sun spilled across the ranch in warm, golden light, illuminating the dew-soaked grass that shimmered like a sea of tiny diamonds. Emily awoke in the cabin feeling a sense of comfort she hadn't known for weeks. Her sleep had been deep and uninterrupted, a rare luxury after nights spent in dusty fields or cramped shelters. She stretched, listening to the soft clatter of Luke moving about the barn, and felt a spark of curiosity and anticipation. When she stepped outside, Luke was already busy tending to the small garden he had started near the barn. Rows of vegetables peeked from the soil: tomatoes, beans, and delicate green sprouts ready to reach for the sun. Luke looked up and smiled warmly. "Morning," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ready to help?" Emily hesitated, unsure if she could be of any use, but Luke's encouraging nod gave her courage. She rolled up her sleeves and joined him, kneeling in the soil beside the neat rows of plants. The earth was cool against her fingers, grounding and reassuring. As she worked, Luke showed her how to water each plant carefully, explaining how they thrived with attention and patience. "You see," Luke said, his voice gentle but instructive, "gardens are a lot like people. They need care, sunlight, and space to grow. Sometimes you have to be patient, even when you think nothing is happening." Emily nodded, absorbing the lesson as much as the technique. The words felt symbolic, echoing her own journey. She had been wandering for so long, unsure of where she belonged or how to survive. Here, in the soft soil and warm sunlight, she realized growth was possible, not just for plants, but for herself too. As the morning passed, their work became lighter and more playful. Luke demonstrated how to gently tie up the tomato plants, and Emily couldn't help laughing when a stubborn vine twisted around her fingers. He laughed too, a deep, genuine sound that echoed across the fields. Their hands brushed occasionally, leaving sparks that made Emily blush, though she quickly looked away, focusing on her task. During a short break, Luke handed her a small bowl of freshly picked berries. Emily tasted them, the sweetness of the fruit mixing with the warmth of the sun on her skin. She glanced at Luke, noticing the quiet pride in his eyes, not just in the garden, but in her. "You're a quick learner," he said, smiling. "I think the garden likes you." Emily felt a blush rise to her cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and pleasure. I've never really worked with plants before," she admitted, "but it feels peaceful." Luke nodded knowingly. "It does, and sometimes peace is just what we need to remember who we are." Their conversation drifted from gardening tips to small personal stories. Emily shared memories of her childhood, the times she had tried to care for small gardens with her mother, and the dreams she had tucked away for a life filled with creativity and connection. Luke listened intently, asking questions, gently encouraging her to elaborate. By mid-morning, a sense of camaraderie had blossomed between them. They laughed over spilled water, teased each other about who had gotten dirtier, and compared which plants looked healthier. Emily felt a warmth that had little to do with the sun. It was the warmth of being truly seen, valued, and treated as an equal. As they stood back to admire their work, the garden now vibrant and orderly, Emily realized that this ranch had become more than a place to find food or shelter. It was a space where she could belong, learn, and grow. And Luke, with his calm patience and quiet encouragement, was guiding her not just in gardening, but in finding the courage to trust herself and her own worth. Before returning to the cabin for lunch, they sat together on a wooden bench under the shade of a large oak tree. The wind played with Emily's hair as she looked around at the open fields, the grazing animals, and the soft shimmer of the garden. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of stability, a place where she could put down roots and breathe. Luke looked at her, his gaze steady and warm. "You've got a good heart, Emily, the kind that makes a difference. I'm glad you're here." Emily's lips curved into a tentative, grateful smile. She felt it deep in her chest, the spark of belonging, the fragile beginnings of trust and connection. She had arrived at the ranch as a weary traveler, unsure of her place in the world. And now, with Luke beside her, she began to understand that life could be more than survival. It could be growth, laughter, and shared moments like this, where the world felt wide, welcoming, and full of possibility. The sun was higher in the sky that morning, spilling golden light over the rolling fields and illuminating the ranch in a warm, inviting glow. Emily stepped outside, feeling the air brush against her skin like a gentle promise of change. The garden they had tended together was thriving, the plants stretching toward the sky with vigor, their colors vibrant and alive. Standing there, Emily realized something remarkable. She felt different too. She felt capable. She felt seen. Luke approached with a basket of fresh produce, smiling as he noticed her gaze lingering on the garden. "Morning," he said. "I think today we should try planting some flowers along the edge of the barn, something to brighten the place." Emily's heart lifted. Flowers, beauty, color, it felt almost symbolic, as if her life itself was beginning to bloom alongside the garden. She nodded, rolling up her sleeves once more, ready to dive into another day of work, but this time with a sense of excitement rather than mere survival. As they planted seeds together, Luke shared ideas for improving the garden layout and adding small artistic touches, a little stone path, a simple wooden trellis for climbing plants. Emily's imagination sparked. She suggested patterns for the flower beds, ideas for arranging colors to create visual harmony. Luke listened intently, nodding and smiling as he followed her lead. For the first time, Emily felt that her ideas mattered, that her creativity was not just welcome but valued. "You've got a real knack for this," Luke said, brushing soil from his hands. "I'm glad you're here to help. This place needed your touch." Emily's cheeks warmed at the praise. A small smile spread across her face, tentative but genuine. She felt a shift inside herself, a growing confidence, a sense that she could contribute meaningfully, that she was more than a weary traveler clinging to scraps. Here, in the bright sunlight and the fertile soil, she was learning to trust her instincts, her ideas, and even her heart. They worked side by side, laughter spilling between them as they stumbled over stubborn roots or accidentally drenched each other with water. Each small moment felt like a quiet victory. Emily's hands were dirty, her arms tired, but her spirit was lighter than it had been in months. She realized that she no longer measured her worth by what she owned or what she could trade. Her value came from who she was, from her courage, her kindness, and her willingness to embrace new experiences. At midday, they paused to rest under the shade of a sprawling oak. Luke pulled a small tin out of his pocket filled with freshly baked bread. He tore a piece and offered it to her. "You've earned it," he said, simply. Emily took the bread, tasting it with gratitude. She glanced at Luke, noticing the easy way he carried himself, the quiet strength, the patience, the warmth. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider what it would be like if someone truly cared about her, someone who saw her as more than a burden. "You know," Luke said, breaking the silence, "gardens aren't just about plants. They're about people too. You nurture them, give them attention, and they grow. The same goes for yourself. You've got more courage and heart than you realize." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. His words were gentle but firm, like a guiding hand on her shoulder. She thought of the days she had spent wandering alone, unsure if she had anything to offer, and now here she was thriving, not just surviving. She was learning to trust herself, to embrace her abilities, and to let someone else see her worth. As they returned to work, Emily noticed the subtle changes within herself. She walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and laughed more freely. The garden, once a daunting task, now felt like a canvas for her creativity. She realized that she had transformed from a weary traveler clinging to survival into a young woman discovering purpose, joy, and connection. By evening, the garden glowed in the soft light of the setting sun. Flowers and vegetables alike seemed to celebrate the day's work, standing tall and vibrant. Emily looked at Luke, gratitude and warmth shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing in me." Luke smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I didn't believe in you. You already had it in you. I just helped you see it." Emily's heart swelled with a sense of belonging she had never known. Here, in the sunlight, the soil, and the companionship of a kind soul, she realized that transformation wasn't about changing who she was, it was about discovering who she truly could be. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to dream, hope, and believe in the beauty of new beginnings. The ranch was alive with a soft hum of activity that morning, a rhythm Emily had come to love. The air was crisp and sweet, carrying the scent of freshly turned soil, blooming flowers, and the faint aroma of breakfast cooking in the main house. Emily stepped outside, feeling a sense of purpose and excitement she hadn't known in months. Today wasn't just about tending the garden or learning new tasks. It was about sharing her joy with others. Luke had suggested organizing a small harvest celebration, a tradition among the neighboring ranch families. Emily had hesitated at first, unsure if she belonged in such gatherings, but Luke's quiet encouragement had given her the courage to help. Together, they had arranged tables of fresh produce, simple decorations of wildflowers, and strings of lanterns to hang along the fence for the evening. Emily felt a thrill in creating beauty for others, in giving something of herself back to a community that had welcomed her so warmly. As the neighbors arrived, laughter and conversation filled the air. Children ran between tables, their playful squeals mixing with the soft lowing of cows and the gentle breeze. Emily noticed how naturally she moved among the guests, offering a friendly smile here, helping a child pick berries there. For the first time in a long while, she felt at home, not just at the ranch, but in the wider circle of people who had accepted her without question. Luke moved beside her, his hand brushing hers as he guided her through introductions. "You've got a gift," he said softly. "People feel comfortable around you." Emily blushed but smiled, feeling the truth in his words. She realized that her presence alone had value, that she was more than her past struggles or the gold ring she had once clutched so tightly. Here she belonged. The celebration began in earnest as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the fields. Lanterns flickered to life, their light dancing across smiling faces. Music drifted from a small group of neighbors playing simple instruments, a melody that seemed to echo the rhythm of life on the ranch. Emily joined in, clapping along, laughing as children twirled under the lantern light. She felt a sense of joy so complete it almost overwhelmed her, a joy born of belonging, purpose, and shared celebration. At one point, Luke and Emily stood near the edge of the garden, admiring the way the lanterns reflected off the leaves and the harvest. "Look at what you've done," Luke said quietly. "You've brought life to this place in more ways than one." Emily looked at him, her chest swelling with emotion. She had come to the ranch wary, uncertain, and lonely. And now, standing amidst the warmth of laughter, music, and glowing lanterns, she realized that she had transformed. Not just in her skills or confidence, but in the way she saw herself. She was no longer a stranger. She was part of a community that valued her, welcomed her, and celebrated her presence. As the evening drew on, Emily helped serve food, offering bread, fresh vegetables, and fruit to the guests. The simple act of giving felt profound. She watched the smiles on their faces, the easy conversations, and the warmth in their eyes, and she felt a deep gratitude for the ranch, for Luke, and for the life that had slowly unfolded before her. Later, when the guests had departed, the ranch settled into a quiet calm, the lanterns still casting a soft glow over the fields. Emily and Luke sat on a bench near the garden, watching the fireflies dance among the flowers. "You fit in here perfectly," Luke said, his voice gentle but firm. "You belong, Emily, and the garden. It's just the beginning of what you'll bring to this place." Emily smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She had arrived at the ranch desperate for food, weary from her journey, uncertain of her place in the world. And now she had found more than nourishment. She had found purpose, friendship, and the first hint of love. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt fully alive. The ranch was no longer just a temporary refuge. It had become a home, a place where she could grow, thrive, and share her gifts with others. As she watched the soft glow of lanterns flicker across the garden, she realized that belonging wasn't something to be earned. It was something to be embraced when given. And for Emily, that gift had finally arrived. The ranch had fallen into a gentle calm under the early evening sky. The sun was a soft amber, fading slowly into shades of pink and lavender as it dipped behind the distant hills. Emily walked through the garden, her fingers brushing the tops of the tall vegetables and flowers, feeling the cool evening air stir the scent of earth and blooms. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't rushing, wasn't worried about survival. She was simply present, soaking in the peace that had become a quiet companion to her new life. Luke joined her, carrying a small lantern that cast a warm glow on the path before them. He didn't speak at first, walking in comfortable silence beside her. The only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves in the wind and the faint chirping of crickets settling in for the night. Emily glanced at him, noticing how his eyes reflected the fading sunlight, warm and attentive, holding her gaze without pressure or expectation. "I'm glad you stayed," Luke said finally, his voice low and gentle. "I was worried you might. Move on after a day or two?" Emily laughed softly, a sound that blended with the evening breeze. "Move on? I don't think I could anymore. Not after all this." "Not after you?" Her voice faltered slightly, uncertainty creeping in despite her growing confidence. Luke stopped and turned to face her, his expression earnest. "Emily, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." His hand hovered briefly near hers before brushing against it lightly, a tentative touch that sent a flutter through her chest. She looked up at him, her heart beating faster than she expected. "Yes?" Luke took a deep breath, the quiet of the evening emphasizing the sincerity in his tone. "From the moment I saw you at the gate, I knew there was something different about you. You're kind, strong, and full of heart. And over these days, as I've watched you grow and bring life to this place, I've realized I care about you, more than I can put into words." Emily's eyes widened slightly, her breath catching in her throat. She had felt a growing bond, the subtle warmth of connection, but hearing him say it aloud made her chest tighten with both joy and fear. "Luke, he reached out gently, taking her hands in his. "I don't want to rush you. I just want you to know how I feel. You've become important to me, Emily, not because of anything you can give me, not because of gold or work, but because of you. Just you." Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, the emotions she had held back for so long threatening to spill over. She looked at him, seeing sincerity in every line of his face, the warmth of his eyes, the gentle strength in his hands. For the first time in her life, someone saw her, not her possessions, not her mistakes, but her heart, and valued it. "You really mean that?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Luke nodded, a small smile curving his lips. "I do. You're more valuable than gold, Emily. You've changed this place and me in ways I didn't even know I needed." Emily felt a surge of courage, the walls she had built around her heart slowly crumbling. She squeezed his hands, a smile breaking across her face. "I care about you too, Luke, more than I thought possible. I didn't know I could feel this way again, but I do." The moment settled between them, warm and steady, as if the world itself had paused to witness it. The lantern light flickered across their faces, painting soft shadows that mirrored the quiet intimacy of the scene. Emily felt a lightness in her chest, a sense of belonging and connection that had been absent for so long. Luke leaned closer, resting his forehead gently against hers. "And we'll face this life together," he whispered. "No gold, no pretense. Just us and the life we choose to build here." Emily closed her eyes, letting herself savor the simplicity and perfection of the moment. She felt safe, cherished, and deeply seen. For the first time, love didn't feel complicated or frightening. It felt like home. As they stood together in the fading light, hands intertwined, Emily realized that everything that had led her here, her struggles, her journey, her fears, had been worth it. She had found someone who valued her for herself, someone who would walk beside her as she continued to grow, thrive, and love. The evening deepened into night, the first stars twinkling above the ranch, and Emily knew that life had changed irrevocably. She had found belonging, purpose, and the gentle, enduring love of someone who truly saw her. And in Luke's steady gaze, she saw a future filled with hope, warmth, and endless possibilities. The first light of dawn spilled over the horizon, casting the ranch in gentle shades of pink and gold. Emily stood at the edge of the garden, the cool morning air brushing her face, carrying the earthy scent of soil, flowers, and new possibilities. The garden, once a symbol of her hesitancy and uncertainty, now thrived, bursting with vibrant vegetables, climbing vines, and blossoms of every color. Every leaf seemed to echo the journey she had traveled, from despair to hope, from loneliness to belonging. Luke emerged from the barn, carrying a small basket of freshly picked produce. His presence was calm and reassuring, yet there was a brightness in his eyes that mirrored Emily's own newfound joy. He smiled as he approached her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Morning," he said simply. "The gardens never looked better." Emily laughed softly, a sound that had become natural to her over the past weeks. "Neither have I," she replied. Her voice carried a certainty she hadn't known before. She had arrived at the ranch exhausted, anxious, and unsure of her worth. And now, standing in the morning light, she realized that she had not only found a place to rest, she had found a home and a life she could build with intention, care, and love. They walked together through the rows of the garden, hand in hand, inspecting the growth with pride. Emily noticed how much she had learned, how capable she had become, and how much joy she derived from contributing to something larger than herself. Luke glanced at her, noticing the confident way she moved, the ease in her smile, the spark of life that seemed to radiate from her very being. "You've done something incredible here," Luke said, his voice quiet but full of admiration. "Not just with the garden, with this whole place and with me." Emily felt warmth rise in her chest. "I didn't do it alone," she said, squeezing his hand. "You showed me how to believe in myself. You gave me a chance when I thought there were none left." Luke smiled, a tender expression that made her heart flutter. "You gave yourself that chance too. I just helped you see it." For a long moment they walked in silence, letting the beauty of the morning and the serenity of the ranch fill the space between them. Birds sang from the nearby trees, and the gentle rustle of leaves added a soothing rhythm. Emily realized that the fear and uncertainty that had once defined her life were no longer shackles. They were stepping stones that had led her here, to a place of trust, hope, and love. As they reached the edge of the barn, Luke paused and turned to face her fully. "Emily, this is just the beginning," he said. "There's a lot we can do here together. Build a life, a home, a community, and maybe even a family if that's what we want." Emily's eyes glistened with tears, not of sadness, but of joy and gratitude. "I want that," she whispered. "I want all of it with you." Luke pulled her close, holding her gently as the morning sun bathed them in warmth. Their foreheads rested together, a quiet promise shared between them. Emily felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Together, they turned toward the farmhouse, ready to face whatever the day would bring. The fields stretched endlessly before them, alive with promise and possibility. Each step they took was a declaration that life could be gentle, kind, and full of wonder, that love could heal and strengthen, and that a single act of acceptance could change the course of a life forever. Emily looked at the thriving garden, the warm glow of the ranch buildings, and Luke beside her. She realized that her journey had not been about gold, possessions, or survival. It had been about discovering her own worth, the courage to trust others, and the beauty of being truly seen. And in that moment, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Emily knew that a new chapter had begun. A chapter full of hope, growth, love, and belonging. The ranch was more than a refuge. It was a home, a canvas for dreams, and a place where hearts could flourish. With Luke by her side, Emily stepped forward into this new beginning, ready to embrace a life of purpose, joy, and enduring love. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled freely, knowing that she had finally found where she belonged, in the promise of a future that was bright, open, and hers to create.